All right, well, thank you so much for having me. It looks like you can see my screen, so I think I'm good to go.
Yeah, it looks
It's
great.
okay, wonderful. It's great to be here today to talk to you a little bit about NIDIS and some of the new things that we have going on within the Midwest and Missouri River Basin. But I also am excited to showcase our new Drought.gov website. So hopefully you'll find out some new resources or information that you didn't know before if you haven't been involved in any of the NIDIS work quite yet, or even if you have, maybe there's some new information. So just briefly, I'm going to kind of go over the what is NIDIS, what is a drought early warning system, just in case there are some new people. So NIDIS was first authorized by Congress in 2006. And since then, we've been reauthorized 2 times in 2014 and 2018. And NIDIS itself, we sit within NOAA as well, but we have within our public law from Congress a mandate to work across different federal agencies, state agencies, tribal, local partners, academia, and many other partners across the country. And our goal is to really help our country move from a more reactive state when it comes to drought to being more proactive. And so in our public law, it states that we will create a national drought early warning system. So what exactly is that? Drought early warning system, we also abbreviate it by calling it a DEWS. To me, it helps by looking at the definition of early warning. And that definition is the provision of timely and effective information that helps an individual that's exposed to a certain hazard to take action to hopefully reduce their risk and reduce the impacts that are felt. So when we look at this definition of early warning in the context of drought, what are those pieces of information that people need to know in order to make more effective decisions? And this graphic on the slide here shows what those pieces of information are. So even though drought early warning sounds like we're talking about just forecasting and really having earlier warning of drought happening, while that's a really important component, it takes into consideration many other factors as well, like observations and monitoring. Again, predictions and forecasting, of course, is very important. Planning and preparedness, communication and outreach of conditions and resources, and also interdisciplinary research and applications. So making sure that we understand the science and the drivers and everything that goes into drought so that we can be more effective when it comes to planning, monitoring, and forecasting. So as I mentioned before, NIDIS has a mandate to create a national drought early warning system. Since the climates are very different across the country, we are starting for the last decade plus, 2 decades almost, we have been launching regional DEWS across the country. So each of these drought early warning systems, of course, focuses on those 5 components that I showed on the previous slide, but they each have their own spin. Of course, you know, the indicators that are most appropriate for the Western US might be different than what we have here in the Midwest. So it really takes into consideration the different nuances that we have across the US. And essentially what our regional DEWS are is a network of partnerships, federal partners, tribal, state, local, academic partners, and others that are really working to make climate and drought science accessible and useful for decision makers. So the National Weather Service is definitely a key partner in our drought early warning systems. And there are partnerships that we're trying to continue to build across the different regions. I know I'm the Midwest coordinator. I'm not sure if I mentioned that earlier. And I know that I do have good relationships with many of the offices in the National Weather Service, but I definitely know that there are more that I need to reach out to. So we would love to have more interactions with National Weather Service. If you have not been involved in the DEWS. And I'm also happy to connect you with the other coordinator that covers the Central National Weather Service, which is Britt Parker, in the Missouri River Basin, and I'll provide our information here in just a few minutes. I wanted to just briefly mention that if you're interested in finding out a little bit more about what's going on in the different DEWs that cover the central region, we do have a strategic action plan that was just released for the Missouri River Basin. The Midwest Drought Early Warning System strategic plan should be released here hopefully within the next month or two. So right now we're working off of a plan that ended technically in 2019, although a lot of the topics are still relevant. But that new plan for the Midwest will be coming out here in just a little bit. I wanted just to provide a little bit of information of sort of what the Midwest DEWs looks like in action. This is just a few of the many things that are going on related to two topics, which is observations and monitoring and communications and outreach. So for observations and monitoring, just an example of two projects that NIDIS is currently funding with partners in the region. Right now, we're working with the Indiana State Climate Office to develop a flash drought risk tool. This is a tool that will hopefully, it's actually using machine learning, so it's a little bit of a new technique that they're working through to identify locations that might have some risk for flash drought in the coming week or two. So that's in development right now. We also have another study that's looking at EDDI, which is the Evaporative Drought Demand Index. I'm not sure how familiar all of you are with that indices, but it is looking to identify how well or how we can use EDDI here in the Midwest to hopefully give us some earlier indication of drought. When it comes to communications and outreach, something that NIDIS is continuously doing is releasing drought status updates for the region. This is when we are in drought or if there are areas that are of concern, for instance, as we go into the growing season. And NIDIS puts these together with our regional partners, Doug Cluck and Ray Wolf from the National Weather Service. Or I guess Doug's not National Weather Service, he's NCEI, but others with NOAA and then USDA Midwest Climate Hub. We put these drought status updates together and release them on drought.gov and also through our listservs. And I'll show a little bit more information and talk about those here in just a second. All of our DEWs also have in-person meetings, typically annually. Of course, COVID has changed that a little bit. There were some virtual meetings over the last year, but we're hoping by spring of 2022, maybe even this fall, we can start in-person meetings again. I did want to just touch briefly on our current drought response activities in this region. As I'm sure all of you know, obviously drought is a concern right now, especially as we're looking at the northern plains and of course western Colorado as well. But we've also had some conditions deteriorate more recently in the upper Midwest as well. And so we are increasing our outreach on the conditions and with partners across both of the DEWs. So I just wanted to mention a few of upcoming webinars that we're having. So for those that are familiar, Doug Cluck and Dennis Toddy produce a monthly webinar with partners with the state climatologists the third Thursday of the month, the North Central Climate and Drought Outlook webinar. They're having a special webinar, I guess that would be tomorrow at 11 a.m. Central, I believe, just to provide an update on the conditions since we are experiencing drought across many areas. They're also going to have their regular monthly webinar on July 15th as well. Something that NIDIS has been doing in partnership with the North Central CASC, which is the Climate Adaptation Science Center, we've been hosting a summer tribal webinar series in response to the drought conditions in the northern plains. So we've had two of these, and those recordings can be found on drought.gov. But we do have at least one more webinar coming up on July 28th, and these really are geared towards our tribal partners. And so if you are in contact with any tribal partners, we would love if you would pass along the information to them just to spread the word a little bit about that webinar series. And then NIDIS is hosting a Western Drought Crisis webinar on July 20th. And so this does cover some of the states in the central region, so I wanted to mention it as well. And again, all of these events can be found on drought.gov. Another thing that we are doing are increasing the frequencies of our drought status updates for both the Missouri River Basin and the Midwest. So if you are not on either of our listservs, if you don't get emails from myself or Britt Parker and you're interested, let me know and we can definitely add you to that. And then finally, another mention, as I mentioned before, we really do want to increase our partnerships with National Weather Service. So if you have any needs as it comes to responding to this current drought, writing the drought information statements, want any more information, or ways that we can spread the word about what your messaging is, definitely reach out to us. We would love to hear from you. And with that, I just wanted to quickly show, before I hop over to drought.gov, contact information for myself and Britt Parker. As I mentioned, I'm the Midwest coordinator, and you can see the map there, and she is the Missouri River Basin. I will mention, even though our regions do technically show that I don't cover portions of the Great Lakes Basin, of the states that are in the Great Lakes Basin, we really do cover the entire states that fall within our region. So just as an FYI, if it doesn't look like your forecast office really falls within these regions, we kind of have fuzzy boundaries and we do cover the entire state. I'm also helping out Britt with some of the current drought response activities in the MRB. So I'm the main point of contact when it comes to the current drought at the moment, but Britt is also very involved with that. So before I hop over to drought.gov, I did just want to stop for a second and see if there are any questions at the moment.
Thanks, Molly. Again, raise your hand or type in the questions pane if you have a question. You mentioned more frequent drought status updates, Molly.
Yes.
What's the frequency going to be on those?
Yeah, it depends. We at least try to do them monthly when we are in drought, but we actually have been providing more information through our listserv a little bit more frequently than that. For instance, after this webinar tomorrow on July 1st, we will actually be creating a drought status update based off of that so that we can send out information to our listservs and also have a link to the recording of the webinar. So I would say, you know, at least monthly, but sometimes we do increase that maybe to every other week as needed. If there is other information needed more frequently, though, by offices and it'd be helpful, that's something we could explore in terms of, you know, providing information more frequently, specifically to National Weather Service.
Okay, great, thank you. Not seeing any hands raised at this time.
Okay, all right, I will go ahead and proceed then to talk about drought.gov. As I mentioned earlier, Drought.gov was relaunched in January of this year, and it really is a completely new redesign and a lot of new content that's available on the website. There's a lot of interactive maps and data, a lot of statistics in terms of how many people are experiencing drought, you know, what percent of agriculture is in drought, for instance. And of course, up-to-date drought conditions at various scales are now available. So I am going to go to drought.gov here and just kind of do a brief overview of the website, showing a few things that you might be interested in as National Weather Service. But of course, I'm not going to be able to hit everything. So if there is something in particular you're looking for, just reach out and I can let you know if it's available. So this is the main page, and just briefly going over the toolbar here, we do have a section for data and maps, and you can organize or look at this by current conditions, impacts, outlooks, and we have specific information on that. You can also click on all data here, and then you can filter. So if you are interested in looking at soil moisture tools, for instance, it will filter to the tools that are available just for soil moisture. We also, in the data and map section, have topics. So if you're interested in looking at data and maps for agriculture, for instance, we do have a page that is tailored to really highlighting those data, maps, and tools that are related to agriculture. And there's other topics there to explore as well. As I mentioned, actually, I'm going to quickly do the by sector and then go to by location. We have new sector pages, so if you're interested in learning more about how agriculture interacts with drought, drought impacts agriculture, drought impacts manufacturing, and specific tools that are related to that sector, each of these pages really has a lot of information, and it's also showing what NIDIS is doing and our partners related to those topics. We also have by location ability to look at drought conditions, and this is really a new feature that's really neat, where you can scale, you can go from the international scale all the way down to your local zip code scale. So this is something that I'm going to showcase in just a little bit here, showing really the information that you can get at these different scales. And this is also where you can access information on any of the regional dues. Another new feature is the research and learn. So this is really showing sort of the Drought 101 pages. If you're interested in just learning more about drought basics or monitoring drought or snow drought, these pages sort of have an overview of each of those topics. And we also have pages on funding opportunities, drought relief, and other things like that. And if you are interested in learning more about the research that's going on that NIDIS is supporting, this science and report section is another area to dive into. The About section has information, of course, of our partners, our tribal engagement, and also some really neat pages highlighting exactly what is drought early warning, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about the idea of drought early warning. And then finally, on the main page, I just wanted to showcase here that we do have news and events. We have upcoming events, our latest news articles, and for all of these, you can search the archives. You can also search upcoming events, and you can sort by dues, for instance. All of our drought status updates, our webinar recaps, really anything news related. So those upcoming webinars that I talked about, you can find everything here on the news and events page. So I just wanted to briefly show you a few things, dive into a few of these features, one of which is really the local information that you can get. So as I mentioned, you can actually go down to the zip code scale. I'm going to throw in Champaign, Illinois, which is where I'm located. So you can get a specific city's information, most recent drought conditions. I did want to point out that for the local pages, so county or city, you can actually sign up for alerts. So when your area goes into drought or out of drought or changes levels on the Drought Monitor, you can get an email directly to you saying that those conditions have changed. We are going to be expanding this in the near future to include other indicators and different thresholds as well. So that's something that might be of interest moving forward. So these city pages have a lot more information on different drought indicators. It shows you from the Climate Toolbox Water Watcher sort of where your area's at in terms of different indicators like the Drought Monitor, precipitation, PDSI, and stream flow. We also have, NIDIS has developed with the Climate Engine group at the Desert Research Institute some short-term and long-term drought indicator blends that can only be found on Droughtgov. So these are a new data set that can be used to show the overall drought conditions. And then there's also Outlook information as well from EDI and also the Climate Prediction Center. And there's also historical information. And I feel like these are not working like they should be, of course. It wouldn't be a demo if that didn't happen. I will try to go to the historical maps through a different page. We also have county pages as well. So that might be of interest if you are interested in showing some information from a specific county from your office. Let me go here. Oops, load Illinois County. Actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to search through here. Not to be biased towards Champaign, but just because that's what I'm familiar with, I'm going to show that here. Although we're not in drought right now. We were drier earlier this year. But it shows the counties in Illinois, and it also shows recent Drought Monitor, temperature trends from the 30-day departures from normal, and precipitation as well, and similar information, like I said before. See, again, an error. Of course that happens. But I mentioned there's a lot of statistics, and you'll see throughout the website that there are things like this where it shows how many acres of corn there are in Champaign County, for instance. So if you are interested in having more statistics for certain counties, that's a lot of that information is available here. Okay, and my internet is definitely having troubles at the moment. So I wanted to show the historical conditions. Let's see here. Oh my goodness, my internet is struggling. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so if we go to historical information, this is a really neat slider tool that was developed as part of the new website. You can look at US Drought Monitor conditions by sliding this, and then you also can see the spatial extent. But not only do we have the Drought Monitor, we also have drought data from 1895 to the present. Again, you can slide, and you'll also get the spatial aspect of what conditions were. And then we also actually have paleoclimate data, which is really not available anywhere else. So if you're interested in looking at certain decades, for instance, you can filter certain time periods if you're interested in that. For any of these graphics that are available in these blue boxes, you actually can download screenshots. So this is something that could be helpful with social media, for instance, as well. And then one other thing I wanted to show before I dive into the dues pages, we do have state pages available. I will go to Iowa, show some love for some other areas. And you can get the current conditions, but what I really wanted to show here, actually I did not pick the best state for this. Let me go back to the state page and select North Dakota. Something that's available on the state pages, and I know that I believe we're going to be adding these to the county pages as well, is that we actually have a little banner here that shows if there's a National Weather Service drought information statement for those states. And so if I click here on this, we do have a page specific to showing where we do have NWS drought information statements. And then if you click on the little information, you can then get scrolled down to here and see, for instance, the drought information statement from Chicago. So if you're interested in pointing people to find your drought information statement or others in the region, this is a resource that could be shared. Before I dive into the dues pages, I did just want to stop and see if there were any other questions or comments or anything like that at this moment.
Hey, thanks, Molly. Again, raise your hand or type in the questions pane if you have a question. I did get a chat. We were impressed with that slider tool that showed the drought status going back really slick.
That is one of my favorite new tools. Not one of, it is my favorite new tool that we have available. I know it's been really helpful for me. If I start to, if I want to look into a certain location or just time to be able to scroll, it really is neat. So we are going to be adding more features to some of these tools moving forward, but this one is definitely one of my favorites as well.
Yeah, that is really, really nice. Not seeing any hands raised at this time, so I think we can just continue on.
All right, so before wrapping up, I wanted to showcase what's available on the dues pages. So I am going to showcase the Midwest dues page. And again, as I'm going through this, a very similar look is available for the Missouri River Basin dues as well. So they all have the same content in terms of the structure, and then just, of course, some changes depending on the region. So you're able to access our strategic action plan from this page, and then also you're able to look at the latest drought status updates that are available. The most recent one came out on June 10th for the Midwest. And so this is one way that you can access those drought status updates for the region. And again, as I mentioned, we also send these out through our email listservs as well. There's also a banner that, it indicates that there are drought indicators showing drought could be present or developing. So it sends people off to the current conditions. So we had gotten feedback that, people really don't go to the regional pages for drought information like the current status. So we really geared these dues pages more towards really showcasing what our regions are all about in terms of the partnerships and the networks. And so that's really the focus. And one of those new features is having this regional activities table. And the idea behind this regional activities table is not just to showcase NIDIS activities, but really to showcase our partners. So if there are drought activities that you are all doing that you're interested in having displayed on this table, we can definitely add it. I believe, let me go to Minnesota here. There is a Minnesota specific National Weather Service activity. Looks like there's a few pages. So this Island Lake Reservoir Technical Committee was one that was submitted, I believe, through the National Weather Service, just showcasing an activity that they have with Minnesota Power in the state. So this is something that, is kind of separate from your typical drought information statements, which of course are available. But if you have other drought activities going on within your county warning area, we would love to add them to these tables. But as I showed, you can filter by state, by partner, by dues component if you're interested in, just looking at the prediction. And actually, let me clear this really quick. If you're just interested in the prediction and forecasting component, you can look and search for projects that are going on related to that. So it shows some of the research that NIDIS is funding, for instance. So again, if you have anything you want to submit to this table, please let me or Britt Parker know. So we also have a resources section on each of the dues pages, and each of these were customized by the coordinators for the region. So you can see that they are organized by the dues components. So if you're looking for observation and monitoring tools for drought in the Midwest, these tools were sort of handpicked by me as ones that I feel are really useful for Midwest people, partners, and others that are looking at conditions. It's a mix of monitoring tools, but also where you can find drought impacts as well. And then the same thing is true for the planning and preparedness. There are some example planning resources that are available. Hopefully more of these will be added in the future, and each of these pages will sort of evolve moving forward. Predictions and forecasting, we do link to the CPC outlooks and other projections from EDI, the projected Palmer hydrological index, and then we also highlight some climate change tools as well. For communication and outreach, this is where you can get the most recent regional documents. So for instance, if you're interested in getting, we have the most recent hazard outlooks from the National Weather Service from June. There's also, links to our monthly webinar series, the quarterly climate report, and the Midwest Dues email listserv. And then finally, there's a tab for research and applications. There's a lot of interesting research going on in the Midwest right now related to drought. So these little research profiles show sort of a quick snippet of the research that's going on, a brief overview, who's doing the research, and sort of what's expected from the research. And then as we do have results, we will be posting them here as well. So if you're interested in looking and finding out more about research, that's the place to go. And then we also have information on the partners for the Midwest. And as I mentioned, all of this information on the dues pages is very similar for one region to the next. So the Missouri River Basin has, customized tools that are available as well. So you'll see there are some differences between what's highlighted. Especially there is an Upper Missouri River Basin Drought Indicators dashboard, which is focused, I believe, on, you can see the states here, the Dakotas, Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho. So that's a really great regional resource for those that are in those states. Okay, I think that is all I have, and I, again, am happy to take questions or hear from any of you if you're interested in, if you have questions of other resources that are available or wish list items. I am going to quickly go back to the presentation. I think, nope, let me go this way. Again, there's the contact information, and if you are interested in providing feedback on the new website, there is a survey that you can take or email that website direct, or the drought.portal at NOAA.gov.